Sam Bankman-Fried was a 30-year-old wunderkind who, for many people, became the face of cryptocurrencies. Those are digital currencies that are maintained by computer algorithms rather than a central bank. But Bankman-Fried's business, a trading platform for cryptocurrencies, which was called FTX, collapsed into bankruptcy last year, eviscerating his estimated $26 billion fortune. Last week, a jury took just 4 hours to convict him of multiple counts of fraud after customers and lenders lost some $10 billion through FTX, making it one of the biggest financial scandals in American history. Tiffany Fong is a freelance journalist who lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a separate cryptocurrency collapse. Well, she spent hours interviewing Sam Bankman-Fried while he was under house arrest. Earlier, she described to GBNews what she made of him.
It's been sort of a twisted, strange journey how I ended up getting in touch with Sam Bankman-Fried. I was, first of all, the victim of another crypto collapse called Celsius Network. I'm not sure if that's something that you're familiar with, but I lost quite a bit of money to Celsius Network. So I just started posting on social media about that company, and I was basically just following their bankruptcy and that collapse. And employees inside of that company ended up sending me a bunch of leaked information, which I started to post on my social media platforms. Sam Bankman-Fried started following me because of that, because I was posting these leaks about another company. And he followed me, I believe, in September last year. And we exchanged a few messages that day. And at that time, he was still sort of the king of crypto. He was flying high and was very respected still. But a few months later, in November, FTX obviously had a very sudden and spectacular collapse. And since Sam and I had been in touch and our DMs were basically open, I just figured I would message him and ask him, hey, would you be willing to chat with me? Tell me your side of the story. And I'm not a traditional journalist. I don't work for an outlet or anything. So I figured if this guy's going to talk to anyone, it'll probably be the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. And I was not expecting a response whatsoever. But a couple of days later, he messaged me back with his phone number and said he'd be happy to chat. And we hopped on the phone that day. And that turned into a series of interviews, sort of ongoing interviews. I had 2 phone calls with him. And then that was prior to him getting arrested in the Bahamas and being put in jail for a bit, or put in prison for a bit, and then extradited to the United States. And when he touched back down in the US and was released onto house arrest, he messaged me, and I ended up being able to interview him in person while he was on house arrest multiple times. So I ended up getting like a front row seat to the biggest financial fraud scandal of our generation. Sam is obviously quite an intelligent person, but I also think that he is just, there are some traits that he has that I think that others might have read as pure genius. So for example, Sam is a very quantitative thinker. The way he talks about anything, whether it be obviously things in business, but also about things like interpersonal relationships, he puts everything into numbers and percentages. So if he's even talking about like an interaction he had with another person, he'll somehow throw in numbers into that conversation. And I think that's just the way he thinks. But I think that other people might have read that as like, oh my God, this guy is a genius. So I think there's some traits that he has that just made people think that he was just this otherworldly sort of wonderkind that might not necessarily be the case. And he sort of just, I guess, fit the whole mold of what people assume a tech founder would be. So obviously people have made quite a fuss of the fact that he wore a t-shirt and shorts in most important meetings. And I guess people sort of read that as him being sort of a Mark Zuckerberg type. So I think that definitely worked in his favor. I think Sam had sort of rationalized everything he did in his head. I really think he, in his mind, thought he was doing everything sort of for the greater good, because I think that Sam genuinely believed in the effective altruism movement, but not necessarily because he's just such a warm, fuzzy, kind-hearted person. I think that he genuinely sort of felt that he's one of the smartest people in the room at all times, and that he is best equipped to take in lots of money and decide how to best distribute it in the world to do the best and the most good for humanity. So in some ways, it was sort of a superiority complex, in my opinion. I think that he's clearly like sort of an overconfident, potentially delusional, and quite a reckless kind of person. But I don't think that he like set out from the get-go of FTX solely to steal a bunch of customer funds so that he could spend it on yachts, etc. ultimately down the road, I would love to chat with Sam again. I mean, I think I did get to know him really well over house arrest, and you have that many conversations with someone at such great length. And I, as much as it might irk people for me to say this, I do see him as a human being. Like, I went into our initial conversations with an open mind because at that point, none of the evidence had been presented against him. All of that happened during his trial. So all of our meetings occurred before that. So I was open to hearing his side of the story. And I do see him as a human being, even though obviously he did ultimately commit a lot of fraud.
Indeed, he did. I found that very interesting. That was Tiffany Fong,